The downtown Austin skyline glinted sharp and modern under the midday Texas sun, glass skyscrapers reflecting the clear blue heat of late summer. I parked my faded silver sedan several blocks away from the towering Novatech Innovations headquarters, intentionally skipping the reserved executive parking garage my wife's corporate status afforded us. After 2 years of stepping back from my full-time software career to run our home, handle every personal detail, and anchor our marriage while my wife's company exploded into one of Texas's fastest-growing tech startups, I'd grown accustomed to existing in the quiet background of her high-powered life. Today, I'd grown tired of the background. I'd come to surprise Alara, my wife of 14 years, the company's founding CEO, with her favorite iced lavender latte and a quiet lunch break together, something we hadn't shared in months amid her endless board meetings, investor trips, and national industry features. I walked up the polished concrete sidewalk toward the building's grand main entrance, dressed in simple neutral casual clothes, no designer labels, no executive polish, just the understated comfort of someone who'd traded corporate boardrooms for grocery runs. Home repairs and midnight schedule adjustments. A sleek metallic sign mounted beside the glass double doors caught my eye immediately. Crisp white lettering against dark steel. Authorized personnel only. Visitors check-in at front desk. It was the standard strict protocol for a high-security tech firm handling sensitive client data and proprietary software patents, normal for Alara's elite industry tier. I'd visited her office a handful of times in the early startup days, before Novatech blew up, back when the team fit inside a small suburban office suite and everyone knew everyone's name. This towering downtown headquarters felt like a completely different world, one I'd never truly been invited into. I approached the uniformed security guard stationed at the entry podium. A middle-aged Latino man with a calm, observant demeanor and a name tag reading, "Man." I offered a soft, friendly smile, holding up the coffee cup in one hand. "Hey, I'm Ethan Hale, Alara Voss Hale's husband." I was hoping to head up and surprise her for lunch. My words were simple, unassuming, the kind of casual introduction I'd made 100 times at family gatherings, friend parties, and small local events. I expected a quick smile, a visitor pass, a wave through the doors. What I got instead stopped me cold mid-breath, freezing every relaxed thought in my... Manny let out a low, amused huff of laughter, shaking his head like I'd just told him a ridiculous... He leaned forward slightly, glancing past me toward the parking plaza and pedestrian walkway behind my shoulder, his tone warm but unequivocally. "Sir, I get where you're trying to come from, but I see the CEO's husband walk through these doors every single workday. Trust me, I'd know him if I saw him. In fact, there he is right now, coming out of the west elevator." He nodded past my shoulder, directing my gaze toward a tall, sharply dressed man in a tailored charcoal suit, polished leather shoes, and a crisp buttoned-down shirt, exiting the building's private executive wing with effortless, natural... I turned slowly, my chest tightening into a strange, hollow ache as recognition hit me instantly. Julian Mercer, Alara's COO, her closest business partner, her right-hand man since the very beginning of tech. 44 years old, charismatic, media-friendly, endlessly polished, the face of the company alongside my wife for every press release, every industry gala, every summit. I'd always known they worked closely, that they spent more waking hours together than Alara and I did. But I'd never imagined the entire building, every staff member, every security guard, every person inside her professional world believed he was her husband. He? Julian moved with easy confidence, pausing to laugh and shake hands with 2 junior executives, his arm brushing casually over the shoulder of a female team lead like he belonged there, like he owned every interaction in that lobby. He carried Alara's signature brand portfolio in one hand, the custom leather-embossed case I'd gifted her for their company launch 3 years prior. He nodded and smiled at every passing employee, and every single person greeted him like he was the company's first family, like he was the one intimately connected to their CEO. No one glanced twice, real husband. No one knew I existed. In that surreal, frozen moment, a quiet, impulsive choice settled over me. I could correct the guard immediately. I could announce my identity, demand access, storm upstairs, and confront the head-on. Or I could play along. I could stay quiet, blend into the background like I always had, and watch the fake life my wife had built in her professional world unfold right in my eyes. I wanted to see exactly what I'd been erased from. I wanted to understand how deep this lie ran, how long my wife had let the world replace me with another man without a single correction, without a single word of for our marriage. I slipped the coffee cup behind my back subtly, dropping my friendly smile and adopting the neutral, curious expression of a random visitor. Wow, my mistake. I must have mixed up my information. I'm just here for a casual inquiry, actually. Manny nodded easily, buying my lie completely. No suspicion, no second glance. He gestured toward the front desk check-in counter, completely unbothered. No worries at all, sir. Front desk can help you with visitor paperwork. Just follow the lobby markers. I stood rooted in for another long minute, watching Julian pause at the reception desk, leaning down to speak softly to the front desk administrator in a tone so warm and familiar it bordered on spousal intimacy. The receptionist giggled, handing him a personal tote bag, not a work folder, a soft fabric bag covered in a favorite floral print. Ms. Voss Hale left this overnight, she told him casually. No formal titles, no professional distance. Said you'd make sure it gets to her afternoon engagement safely. Julian smiled, tucking the bag under his arm like it was daily responsibility, like handling my wife's personal belongings was his natural role. My throat felt tight, a quiet, burning humiliation mixing with profound sadness. For 14 years, I'd loved Alara fiercely. For 2 years, I'd put my entire career, my personal ambition, my own dreams on hold to support her rise. I'd handled every household crisis, every scheduling conflict, every late-night emergency, so she could focus solely on building her empire. I'd been the one at home waiting up for her, the one soothing her stress after brutal investor meetings, the one celebrating her wins and comforting her losses. Yet in the world that mattered most to her, the world she'd spent every waking moment building, I was nothing existent stranger. Was her husband. I turned away from the lobby slowly, walking back toward my car without a single word, the lavender lime cold in my hand. I didn't leave out of anger alone. I left because for the first time in my entire marriage, I realized my perfect, peaceful, supportive life had never been a partnership. It had been an erasure. And the worst part wasn't that the world believed Julian was her spouse. It was that my wife had let them believe it. The question hanging over me as I drove away, head unshakable, was simple. How long had she been okay with replacing me? I drove home through Austin's sun-dappled suburban streets in a quiet daze, the afternoon Texas heat seeping through the car windows, but doing nothing to warm the cold numbness settling in my chest. Our neighborhood was quiet, upscale, lined with mature oak trees and modern single-family homes, the kind of stable, peaceful community we'd built together during Alara's slow climb from startup founder to CEO. Our house was clean, spacious, perfectly maintained, the direct result of 2 years of my full-time dedication. Every painted wall, every landscaped flower bed, every organized closet, every scheduled maintenance check was my work. Our perfect home was my legacy, while her empire was hers alone. For years I'd taken quiet pride in that balance. Today it felt like a hollow consolation prize for being erased from my own marriage. I spent the rest of the day replaying the lobby scene on a relentless loop in my head, dissecting every detail, every casual interaction, every unspoken rule of Alara's professional world. I tried to rationalize it, to soften the sharp blow of what I'd witnessed. Office gossip was harmless, I told myself. Corporate environments thrived on silly assumptions and casual mislabeling. Julian worked closely with her, traveled with her, attended every event with her. Of course, people would mix them up. It didn't mean anything. It didn't mean Alara had actively replaced. It didn't mean she preferred this fake professional partnership over our real 14-year marriage. But the more I rationalized, the more small, forgotten moments resurfaced to contradict every excuse I made. The endless corporate galas I'd never been invited to, the magazine profiles that only mentioned her dedicated leadership team instead of her family, the investor dinners she attended alone, always citing strict business confidentiality, the way she never corrected co-workers when they referenced Julian as her right hand in all things personal and professional. I'd brushed all of it off as corporate necessity, as the price of her success in a cutthroat male-dominated tech industry. Now I wondered if it had all been intentional. A slow, quiet replacement spanning years. 2 days later, I returned to the Novatech building intentionally, this time parking in the public visitor lot, dressed even more casually, determined to blend completely into the background and learn the full truth. I didn't attempt to check in or gain access to the executive floors. I simply lingered in the glass-walled public lobby, browsing the company's digital display walls and pretending to review startup industry materials, listening closely to every conversation swirling. What I discovered over the next 2 hours shattered every last one of my gentle exes. The misidentification wasn't random. It was company-wide doctrine. Every single employee who passed through the lobby referenced Julian as Alara's husband without a single hint of A pair of marketing team members chatted about Alara's upcoming industry awards gala. One casually saying, "I'm glad Julian's attending again this year. They're such a power couple. It's amazing." A group of administrative assistants discussed Alara's recent weekend event, agreeing that her husband Julian had done incredible work coordinating volunteers. A visiting client asked a sales manager how long Alara and Julian had been married, and the sales manager laughed and said, "Years, they're inseparable." No one hesitated. No one knew I existed. The fake marriage was so deeply ingrained in the company culture that it had become fact, unchallenged, unquestioned. Julian saw and heard every single one of these conversations throughout the day, passing through the lobby multiple times, and he never once truth. He never said he was COO. He never mentioned Alara's real husband at home. He let every lie stand, letting the entire company build their professional and social narrative around his fake. By early evening, I drove home with a heavy, resolved heart, ready to finally bring this up with Alara face to face. She arrived home late as usual, just after 8 p.m., exhausted from back-to-back client calls, slipping off her blazer and dropping her work bag by the door with I. She kissed my cheek quickly, a routine automatic gesture, before heading straight for the kitchen to pour a glass of red wine, already at work. I waited until she was seated at the dining table. Her shoulders relaxed before I spoke gently, choosing my words carefully to avoid sounding accusatory, desperate to. "I stopped by your office the other day to surprise you for lunch," I said quietly. "The security guard, and basically your entire team, thinks Julian is your husband. No one knows I exist." Alara's fork paused mid-air, her expression shifting from tired relaxation to mild annoyance in an instant, her brow furrowing like I'd just brought up a trivial, unnecessary problem. She let out a soft, dismissive breath, swirling mine slowly. "Ethan, it's just office gossip," she replied flatly, her tone casual and unconcerned. "People in the building see us together every single day. We run the entire company side by side. It's just silly speculation, nothing to overthink. You're being dramatic about it." Her words cut deep any anger could have. She didn't deny the lie. She didn't apologize for the erasure. She didn't acknowledge how hurtful it was. She just dismissed my valid pain as overreaction, writing off my feelings as trivial and unimportant. Next, reality. I stared at her, stunned by how little this mattered to her, how easily she brushed aside the public replacement of our marriage. "It's not gossip, Alara. It's the entire company's truth. They don't know I'm your husband. They know Julian is, and you never say a word." She rolled her eyes slightly, leaning back in her chair with obvious impatience, for the conversation to end. "It's irrelevant workplace noise," she repeated firmly. "Correcting every random employee's casual comment would be unprofessional and distracting. I don't have time to police office rumors while running a multi-million-dollar company. It doesn't change anything about us or our marriage. You're my husband at home. That's all that matters." In that moment, I understood the irreversible truth hanging between us. To Alara, our marriage existed only within the four walls of our private home. In every other part of her life, her career, her reputation, her legacy, her public, I didn't exist. She was perfectly fine living a double life, a private wife married to me and a public EO married to Julian. And she had no intention of fixing it. As I watched her return to her dinner, already tuning me out to scroll work emails on her phone, I knew our quiet, peaceful marriage of convenience was officially beyond casual repair. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, long before Alara's alarm sounded, sitting quietly at our kitchen counter with a mug of black coffee, replaying our dinner conversation late into the sunrise. For 14 years, I had never once pushed back against Alara's career choices. I had never questioned her boundaries, never demanded attention, never asked to be included in her professional world. I had been the perfect supportive spouse, selfless, patient, accommodating, always putting her success above my own pride, my own needs, my own identity. I'd spent 2 years stepping back from my own promising tech career solely to remove every possible obstacle from her path. But patience and accommodation had stopped being love a long time ago. Now it was just self-erasure, and I was done letting it continue. I opened Alara's company official website, navigating to the executive team contact portal, and submitted a formal in-office meeting request under my full legal name, Ethan Hale, spouse of CEO Alara Voss Hale. I scheduled a 15-minute mid-morning check-in, labeling it Personal Family Administrative Review, a neutral professional title that guaranteed immediate approval without raising red flags. I wasn't staging a scene. I wasn't looking for drama. I simply wanted to show up in her professional world as her real husband, forcing the company's fake narrative to confront the actual truth. I wanted to make the invisible visible, if only for a moment. An hour later, I received an automated confirmation email from Novatech's executive scheduling team, confirming my meeting with CEO Alara Voss Hale. I dressed in clean, professional business casual attire, neat slacks, a crisp button-down polished shoes, nothing flashy. Nothing attention-grabbing, just the quiet dignity of a man refusing to be erased any longer. I drove back to the downtown Austin headquarters, entered through the main lobby, and approached the front desk confidently, no longer hiding, no longer playing the random visit. The young administrative receptionist glanced up at me with a friendly smile, her expression shifting to obvious confusion when I gave my name and meeting reference. She typed slowly into her system, double-checking the schedule, her brow furrowed. "I'm sorry, sir, Ethan Hale? I don't have any record of the CEO having a spouse on file in our employee directory or corporate profile. Are you sure your scheduling information is correct?" Her words landed like a physical blow, confirming every worst fear I'd held. My wife's official corporate profile, the public record defining her professional identity, did not list a husband. I was completely unregistered, unacknowledged, non-existent in her official life. Before I could respond, the elevator doors beside the front desk slid open, and Julian Mercer stepped out directly into the lobby, freezing mid-step the second his eyes locked onto me. His easy, charismatic smile dropped instantly, replaced by a sharp, calculating wariness. He was on his way to a team check-in, tablet in hand, surrounded by staff. But he paused completely, excusing himself from his group to walk directly toward me, his posture stiff and defensive. "Ethan," he said evenly, his tone controlled but tight, no warmth, no casual friendliness. "What are you doing here?" I stood straight, meeting his gaze steadily, refusing to back down or shrink into the background like I always had. "I have a scheduled meeting with my wife," I replied simply, my voice calm, wavering. "Official business." Julian's jaw tightened slightly. He knew exactly who I was. He'd always known. He'd spent years actively benefiting from my erasure, letting the entire world believe he was Alara's partner while I sat home. He nodded toward the executive elevator, his tone lowering into a quiet, warning murmur. "Here. You need to leave. This isn't your place. You don't understand how this company works. You'll mess up everything built." His condescension ignited a quiet fire in me I'd never felt before. For years, I'd respected his professional role, admired his work ethic, trusted his with my wife. But now I saw him clearly. A man actively occupying my role, protecting his fake spousal status like it was his birthright, threatened by presence. "It's my wife's company," I replied firmly. "That makes it my plaything." A few minutes later, I was escorted up to the top-floor executive suite, stepping into Alara's sleek, modern corner office with floor-to-ceiling views. Alara was already seated behind her glass desk, her posture rigid, her face tight with anger. She'd been alerted to my arrival the second I checked in, and she was furious. The second the door closed behind us, she snapped, her voice sharp and frustrated. "What are you doing here, Ethan? Why would you schedule a work meeting unannounced? This is unprofessional, embarrassing, and completely out of line. You're creating unnecessary drama in my workplace." I stared at her, heart heavy but resolve unbroken, refusing to apologize for existing. I'm creating truth, Alara. I'm tired of being the secret husband one knows exists. I'm tired of the entire company believing Julian is your partner while I stay hidden at a shameful secret. Our tense, quiet argument stretched across 15 minutes of charged silence and sharp, clipped words. Alara refused to budge, insisting I was being unreasonable and selfish for disrupt professional environment. I refused to back down, insisting I deserved basic dignity and public acknowledgement as her spouse. By the end of the meeting, nothing was resolved. Everything had changed. The entire executive desk team now knew the truth. The fake perfect power couple narrative had been cracked to see. As I turned to leave the office, Julian appeared in the outer hallway, blocked one last time. He leaned in, his voice low and threatening, no longer hiding his agenda of polite professionalism. Think carefully about what you're doing. You're not risking your marriage right now. You're risking her entire career. Don't be selfish enough to destroy everything she's out of petty pride. I walked past him without a single word, but his warning lingered heavily in my mind. In choosing to claim my identity, I hadn't just started a fight with my wife. I'd started a fight with the entire fake world she'd built around her success, and I knew without a doubt that this battle was only just beginning. In the days following my office meeting, the quiet, controlled chaos of Novatech's corporate culture shifted dramatically, turning subtly but undeniably against me. Office gossip spread faster than wildfire in the tight-knit downtown headquarters. Within 48 hours, every employee, every executive, every support staff member knew the CEO had a real husband, and that he'd suddenly appeared out of nowhere to disrupt the company's long-standing power couple dynamic. The narrative spun by default, shaped entirely by Julian's quiet influence and Alara's obvious frustration. I was the bitter, insecure, unsupportive spouse throwing a childish fit to ruin my wife's thriving career. I watched the smear campaign take shape slowly but surely. No overt malice, no direct insults, just quiet, calculated framing that painted me as the villain of the story. Coworkers whispered that I was jealous of Alara's success. Executives muttered that I resented her out-earning me, that I'd stepped back from my career out of laziness, not sacrifice. Administrative staff speculated that I was emotionally absent and uninvolved, that Julian was the one who truly supported Alara through every hardship, while I stayed home doing nothing. Every good thing I'd done for our marriage, every sacrifice I'd made, every late night of support was completely erased from the company's collective narrative. Julian masterfully fueled this distorted story without ever saying a negative word about me publicly. He continued showing up for Alara's every personal and professional need, bringing her morning coffee, adjusting her event schedules, handling her personal logistics, comforting her after stressful meetings. He casually mentioned to senior leaders that Alara was under unnecessary marital stress that was distracting her from company goals, framing my desire for basic acknowledgement as a harmful disruption to corporate stability. He positioned himself as her steady, reliable support system while I was painted as an unstable, disruptive force in her life. At home, Alara pulled further and further away from me, shutting down every attempt at honest conversation. She came home later every night, spent every evening glued to her work phone, slept facing away from me in bed, and spoke to me only in short, clipped, transactional sentences. She refused to discuss the office situation, refused to acknowledge my hurt, refused to validate my feelings in any way. To her, I was no longer her loving, supportive husband. I was the problem, the obstacle, the source of all her professional struggle. Desperate for outside perspective, I reached out to my closest longtime friend, Clara Bennett, a professional mental health advocate who'd known me since long before my marriage, before I'd stepped back from my career, before I'd become the quiet background spouse. I met her at a quiet neighborhood coffee shop in our suburb, spilling out every detail of the office lies. Julian's fake role, Alara's dismissal of pain, and the company-wide narrative painting me villain. Clara listened quietly, her expression serious and empathetic, no judgment, no rushed conclusions. When I finished speaking, she leaned forward gently, her tone firm and clear. "This isn't office gossip, Ethan. This is emotional erasure. Alara is letting another man occupy your marital role for professional clout, and she's choosing her career image over your dignity every single day. That's not support. That's betrayal." Her words grounded me, confirming every quiet suspicion I'd been too scared to fully admit. But even with her validation, I still clung to one desperate, hopeful misjudgment. I believed Alara was of him too. I believed Julian was manipulating her, slowly taking over her professional and personal life, exploiting her busy schedule and career pressure to insert himself. I believed Alara's refusal to correct the lies was fear, not choice. I convinced myself that if I could just remove Julian's influence, my wife would return to me, our marriage would go back to normal, and all the pain away. I doubled down on trying to fix things privately, texting Alara soft, sincere messages each night, asking to talk, begging for honest communication, offering to compromise if she would just correct the office narrative and reclaim our real marriage publicly. I assumed patience and understanding would win out, that love would override convenience. But every single text went unanswered or received cold, dismissive replies. Then, late one rainy weeknight, I discovered the screenshots that shattered every last one of my hopes. Alara had left her work laptop open on the dining table while she showered, and a Slack notification popped up on Julian. Curiosity and desperation drove me to click open their chat thread. What I found stopped my heart completely. Dozens of messages spanning months, even years, proving Alara had intentionally encouraged Julian's fake spousal from the very start. I read message after message. Alara telling Julian to attend galas in my place because a visible, powerful partner looked better for investors. Alara instructing him to handle her personal public appearances because my husband prefers privacy and doesn't fit the brand. Alara laughing off office mice identification and telling Julian, let them think what they want. It's the company image. It was never Julian alone. It was my wife's deliberate, calculated choice. She had chosen to erase me for her career. She had chosen a fake public marriage for clout over our real private marriage for love. In that devastating moment, I realized every compromise I'd made, every sacrifice I'd endured, every quiet moment of erasure I'd tolerated, never been necessary. It had all been optional, all chosen by her at my expense. The rain tapped steadily against our bedroom windows late that night, soft and constant, matching the quiet, broken numbness settling deep in my chest as I waited for Alara to finish her shower. I sat on the edge of our bed, her laptop open in my lap, scrolling slowly through months and months of hidden messages, every line a new layer of betrayal I hadn't seen coming. I'd spent years blaming office culture, blaming Julian's ambition, blaming the pressure of her high-powered career. But the truth was far simpler, far more painful. Alara had been an active, willing participant in erasing our marriage from her public life. She hadn't been pressured or manipulated. She had chosen it repeatedly, knowingly, for her own professional gain. When Alara stepped out of the bathroom, towel drying her hair, her skin fresh and warm from the shower, her usual calm, composed demeanor intact, I closed the laptop slowly and looked up at her, my voice steady but hollow with exhaustion. I saw your messages with Julian. All of them. Her movements froze instantly. The towel slipped from her fingers onto the bathroom floor. For a split second, pure, unguarded panic flashed across her face before she quickly recovered, slipping back into her CEO composure, cool and defensive. She didn't rush to apologize. She didn't rush to explain. She simply crossed her arms over her chest, waiting for my anger, ready to defend her choices. Why didn't you ever correct them? I asked quietly. No yelling, no accusation, just raw, broken confusion. Why did you let everyone believe he's your husband? Why did you actively encourage it? Alara let out a long, weary sigh, leaning against the bedroom wall. Her tone practical and unemotional, like she was explaining a business strategy instead of justifying the erasure of her marriage. Ethan, you don't understand how the tech industry works, especially for female CEOs in Texas, she began firmly, her tone sharp with professional certainty. Investors and board members don't take solo female leaders seriously. They view unmarried women with invisible private lives, as unstable, risky, unreliable. A visible, consistent, powerful male partner makes me look grounded, trustworthy. It boosts company valuation, investor confidence, brand credibility. I stared at her, stunned by how coldly she could rationalize sacrificing our marriage for corporate metrics. So you traded our marriage's dignity for stock confidence? You erased me so your investors would like you more? It's not that simple, she snapped back immediately, defensive and frustrated. You chose to step back from your career. You chose the private home role. You don't attend industry events. You don't network with investors. You don't fit the polished executive spouse image the corporate world expects. Julian does. He's present, he's polished, he's available. It's just professional brand strategy. Branding strategy? I repeated quietly, my voice cracking for the first all night. You branded our real marriage invisible. You branded me non-existent. You let another man wear my identity for years, and you kidding. Ilara's jaw tightened, her expression hardening, refusing to acknowledge. It never changed anything at home. We were still us privately. This was purely professional, purely surface-level image management. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. That was the core chasm between us, the irreversible divide that could be fixed. To me, marriage was public and private, a unified identity, a lifelong partnership meant to be honored honestly. To Ilara, marriage was a private convenience, a personal detail irrelevant to her public brand, disposable whenever it conflicted her ambition. She truly believed that erasing me from her public life was a harmless professional choice, with no emotional cost, no damage. The conversation ended in cold silence. We didn't fight. We didn't yell. We simply stopped trying to understand each other. The illusion of our perfect unified marriage was completely shattered, broken beyond any repair. The next morning, I woke up to a new corporate email announcement that dropped the final devastating blow. Novatech's annual Industry Awards Gala, the biggest public event of the company's year, had officially registered Julian Mercer as Ilara Voss Hale's official +1 and guest partner for the red carpet and ceremony. The gala was 2 weeks away, a nationally televised industry event attended by investors, media, tech celebrities, and industry leaders across the country. It was the single most public platform of Ilara's entire career. And she had chosen to walk the red carpet with my replacement, officially cementing their fake power couple status for the entire nation to see. As I stared at the official event registration confirmation on Ilara's work phone, I knew our quiet, broken marriage was about to become a very public, irreparable disaster. The 2 weeks leading up to the Novatech Awards, gala unfolded in slow, agonizing tension, every day stretching longer than the last as our marriage unraveled completely behind closed doors. The warm, peaceful routine we'd built for 14 years vanished entirely, replaced by cold silence, distant coexistence, and unspoken resentment. Ilara slept late every night, buried in work to avoid facing me. I stopped cooking elaborate family meals, stopped maintaining our perfect home routine, stopped prioritizing her comfort above my own. We lived in the same house but existed in completely separate worlds. Strangers sharing a roof. Ilara begged me repeatedly to let the gala charade pass without conflict, pleading with me to prioritize her company's stability over my personal pride. She cried, she reasoned, she bargained, insisting that one final public appearance with Julian would secure millions in upcoming investor funding, stabilize the board's confidence, and protect hundreds of employee jobs. Just let this one event go, she'd say softly each night, exhausted and desperate. After the gala, I'll fix everything. I'll correct the rumors, I'll clarify your identity, I'll make it right. Just don't ruin everything we've built for one moment of pride. Her words tore at me endlessly, creating a brutal internal conflict. I understood the stakes. I knew how much the gala mattered for her company, for her employees, for years of her relentless hard work. I hated the idea of destroying her career out of personal hurt. But I also knew that letting her walk the red carpet with another man as her public husband would be the ultimate, irreversible humiliation, a public erasure of our marriage broadcast nationwide for every industry peer to witness. It would validate every lie, every rumor, every fake narrative that had destroyed our partnership. I turned again to Clara for guidance, pouring out my conflicted heart, torn between protecting my wife's career and protecting my own self-respect. Clara's advice was unwavering, firm, and compassionate. A healthy marriage never requires you to sacrifice your dignity for your partner's success, she told me. If she has to pretend another man is her spouse to succeed, her success isn't worth losing your self-worth. Real success doesn't require erasing the person who loves you. While I wavered in quiet conflict, Julian's true intentions finally broke fully into the open, no longer hidden behind professional politeness. He cornered Alara in the office late one evening, confessing his romantic feelings outright after years of quieting. He told her he'd spent years loving her, that he'd stayed by her side through every career struggle because he wanted more than a professional partnership, that he believed they were the true perfect match, that I was holding her back from her full. Alara admitted to him what she'd never admit to me, that she'd grown emotionally distant from our marriage, that she felt more seen, more understood, more aligned with Julian than she ever had. She didn't confess full romantic love, but she didn't reject him either. She let his confession hang in the air, letting him believe his patience and loyalty would eventually win her over. She let him hope for a future with her, fully aware of the damage it would cause. Days later, distant board members caught wind of our marital friction, rumors trickling up from office staff to executive leadership. Alara received a formal confidential inquiry from board chair, questioning the stability of her personal life and whether ongoing marital conflict would impact her ability to lead the company through its critical growth phase. Suddenly, her CEO position was no longer just secure, it was vulnerable, tied directly to the stable, perfect public image she'd spent years cultivating. Alara crumbled under the dual pressure of board scrutiny and escalating emotional tension. For the first time, she broke down crying in front of me, exhausted and overwhelmed, torn between two worlds, two partnerships, two conflicts. She admitted she'd made terrible choices, that she'd let professional convenience override marital loyalty, that she'd erased me out of fear of failure in a male-dominated. But even in her breakdown, she still refused to cancel the Gala +1 Aurelian. In that moment, I lost every last shred of trust I had left. I realized she would never choose me over her career image. She would never prioritize our love over her ambition. She would never fully abandon the fake public life with Julian. The external pressure was mounting higher every day, but the internal damage was already irreversible. My marriage, my trust, my sense of self-worth, all of it had collapsed completely. And the worst part was, the most public, most humiliating chapter of the entire nightmare was still ahead of us. I hit absolute emotional rock bottom the night before the awards gala, sitting alone in our dark, quiet living room long after Alara had fallen asleep upstairs. For months, I'd grieved the slow death of my marriage, mourned the loss of our perfect partnership, wallowed in hurt, confusion, and isolation. I'd alternated between begging for reconciliation and retreating into bitter silence, trapped in a cycle of pain and indecision, letting Alara and Julian dictate every term of the conflict. I'd been passive, reactive, broken, defined entirely by the betrayal I'd endured. But rock bottom stripped away every illusion, every hope, every desperate desire to fix what was already destroyed. It left me with one clear, unshakable truth. I would no longer be the victim of their choices. I stopped waiting for Alara to fix things. I stopped hoping she'd choose me. I stopped compromising my dignity for her career. I stopped letting their fake narrative define my identity, my marriage, my worth. If Alara was willing to publicly replace me for clout, if Julian was willing to exploit her ambition to steal my role, then I would fight back, not with public drama, not with angry outbursts, not with leaked scandals, but with quiet, unshakable dignity and strategic resolve. I would reclaim my truth, my identity, and my boundaries, no matter the cost. I began methodically building my case overnight, gathering every piece of tangible proof of our real 14-year marriage. I organized old wedding photos, joint tax documents, property deeds, family holiday records, years of vacation receipts, anniversary reservations, and personal message threads spanning our entire relationship. I compiled every sacrifice I'd made for Alara's career. Emails detailing my decision to step back from my job, schedules proving my full-time household management, records of every late-night support session during her startup struggles. I didn't gather this material to destroy her. I gathered it to ground myself in reality, to prove to myself that I was never the absent, uninvolved spouse their fake narrative painted me. The next thing, I sat Alara down at the dining table, calm, steady, and completely unyielding. No anger, no desperation, no more begging. I laid out my final, non-negotiable boundaries in clear, unemotional terms. The fake public marriage with Julian ends today. Either you officially correct every company record, every employee rumor, every public profile to acknowledge me as your husband before the gala, or we file for legal separation. I will not spend another day being erased from my own marriage. I will not attend your gala, I will not tolerate your fake public partnership, and I will not compromise my self-respect for your brand ever. Alara was stunned by my sudden firmness, unused to me setting hard boundaries after years of endless compromise. She tried to bargain, to plead, to wear me down with excuses, but I didn't budge an inch. My mind was made up, my patience gone. News of my ultimatum spread quickly to Julian, and he lost his cool completely for the first time since the conflict. He cornered Alara in the office, furious and desperate, pressuring her to choose once for all. He told her I was holding her career hostage, that I was selfish and vengeful, that she owed him for years of loyal support, that she should leave me and build a real with him. He dropped all professional pretense, revealing his true self, a man consumed by ambition and obsession, willing to destroy a marriage to get what he wanted. His desperate pressure backfired. For the first time, Alara saw Julian clearly, beyond his polished professional mask. She saw his selfish agenda, his hunger for her status, his willingness to manipulate her vulnerability for his own gain. She realized he didn't care about her success or her well-being. He only cared about claiming her company, her status. By the end of the day, the power dynamic that had ruled our conflict for months shifted irreversibly. Julian was no longer the calm, supportive hero of Alara's professional life. He was a desperate, manipulative opportunist. I was no longer the bitter, disruptive villain. I was the wronged spouse fighting for basic dignity. For the first time in this entire nightmare, the balance of power tilted in my favor, and the final showdown at the gala was now inevitable. In the days leading up to the awards gala, the entire dynamic of our conflict flipped completely, unraveling Julian's months of careful manipulation and restoring the truth I'd spent months fighting to defend. Alara's eyes were fully open to Julian's true intentions, and she began actively distancing herself from his overreach, pulling back from their overly close professional and personal dynamic, correcting his overstepping boundaries one by one. The polished, perfect facade he'd maintained for years cracked wide open, revealing the insecurity, obsession, and ambition driving every one of his choices. Alara took her first definitive step toward reclaiming the truth of our marriage, sending a subtle but powerful internal company-wide memo to all staff and executives. The memo clarified official corporate protocol for executive family representation, quietly correcting the long-standing false narrative without creating a public spectacle. It stated plainly that Julian Mercer held no personal or spousal affiliation with CEO Alara Voss Hale, that all prior casual assumptions were incorrect, and that Alara's legal spouse was Ethan Hale, a private individual uninvolved in corporate operations. It was a quiet correction, no fanfare, no apology tour, but it was the official public acknowledgement I'd spent months fighting for. The entire office shifted instantly. Staff members stopped referencing Julian as Alara's husband. The gossip faded. The false power couple narrative collapsed overnight. Julian's months of social capital and unearned status vanished in an instant, leaving him furious, embarrassed, and unhinged. Cornered and defeated, he revealed his final, devastating hidden card, the ultimate leverage he'd been holding in reserve to destroy Alara's career. If she ever chose me over him, Julian informed Alara, that if she proceeded with publicly reclaiming our marriage and cutting off his personal proximity, he would resign immediately from his COO position and take with him 3 of Novatech's largest, most loyal client partnerships, accounts responsible for nearly 40% of the company's annual revenue. He'd built exclusive personal relationships with these clients over years, loyalty tied directly to him, not the company. His resignation would tank the company's quarterly projections, shatter investor confidence, devastate the upcoming gala momentum, and potentially destabilize the entire business. It was a brutal, ruthless ultimatum, pure corporate blackmail. Choose your husband and destroy your company, or choose me and save everything you've built. Alara was thrown back into crippling panic, caught between 2 impossible choices, each one costing her everything she loved or viewed. She came home that night broken and defeated, begging me one last time to let the Gala +1 arrangement stand, pleading that the company couldn't survive Julian's retaliation, but I didn't know. I'd already sacrificed too much of my dignity, my identity, and my self-respect to now. Instead of compromising, I stepped into a new role I hadn't occupied in years. Steady, strategic support, calm problems partner. I sat down with Alara and walked through every possible contingency plan, analyzing client contracts, reviewing partnership agreements, mapping out transition protocols if Julian followed through on his threat. I reminded her that a company built on blackmail and false narratives was never stable to begin with, that losing corrupt loyalty was better than sustaining a business. As we worked into the night, rebuilding a fragile new foundation of honest partnership amid the chaos, Alara broke down completely, apologizing sincerely for the first time throughout the entire conflict. She admitted every mistake, every selfish choice, every moment she'd prioritized her brand over our marriage. She confessed her fear of failure, her insecurity as a female CEO, her regret for erasing the man who'd loved and supported her unconditionally. By the morning of the gala, the tables were fully turned. Julian was no longer the powerful, untouchable insider controlling the narrative. He was a desperate, vengeful employee holding the company hostage. Alara was no longer the distant, defensive CEO king her brand. She was a remorseful wife, ready to reclaim her marriage at any cost. I was no longer the invisible, erased spouse. I was the steady, grounded partner holding everything together. The final, irreversible showdown was hours away, and every piece was in place for the ultimate resolution, long nightmare. The night of the Austin Tech Innovation Awards Gala arrived with crisp autumn elegance. The downtown convention center lit up with white string lights. Red carpet rolled out for media and industry elites, cameras flashing and reporters lining the entryway. It was the biggest night of Novatech's year, the night Alara was set to accept the annual Founders Innovation Award, the highest honor in the regional tech industry. For months, this night had represented the peak of her fake public success, the night Julian would officially cement his place as her public spouse. Tonight, it would represent the end of every lie. Julian arrived at the venue early, dressed in his finest tailored tuxedo, positioned at the red carpet entrance, waiting for Alara, fully prepared to walk beside her as her public partner as originally planned. He carried the confident, arrogant energy of a man still convinced he would win the final standoff, certain Alara would choose her company over her marriage, certain his blackmail would prevail. The event staff, media crew, and attending executives all expected the familiar power couple to grace the red carpet together, ready to capture their annual viral moment. Minutes before Alara's scheduled arrival, she made her final, definitive choice. She texted Julian a short, firm message. I will be attending the gala with my husband, Ethan. Your threats will not dictate my life or my marriage. Your employment status will be addressed officially tomorrow morning. There was no hesitation, no compromise, no fear. After months of conflict, she finally chose us over her brand, chose truth over convenience, chose love over ambition. When Alara's black town car pulled up to the red carpet, the doors opened and she stepped out first, stunning in her formal evening gown. But she did not walk toward Julian. She turned back to the car, reached her hand inside, and helped me step out onto the red carpet beside her. I stood beside her in a tailored suit, calm, steady, visible, present for the first time in her public professional. The crowd fell into a stunned hush. Cameras flashed rapidly, reporters murmuring in surprise, industry elites whispering in shock. The entire room had expected Julian. Instead, they saw Alara Voss Hale standing hand in hand with her real husband, the man no one had known existed, the man she'd spent years erasing from her public. Julian stood frozen at the red carpet barrier, his face draining of color, his confident facade crumbling completely. He watched as Alara smiled up at me genuinely. No performative brand charm, no corporate pretense, just honest public spousal action. Every lie he'd built, every fake role he'd occupied, every ounce of unearned status vanished in that single red carpet. During her acceptance speech later that night, Alara delivered the final public resolution to every month of conflict, addressing the entire room of investors, media, and industry leaders with unflinching honesty. Success in business means nothing without integrity in life, she said firmly, her voice clear and steady across the silence. For years, I prioritized my public brand over my private truth. I allowed professional convenience to overshadow the most important partnership of my life. Tonight, I choose truth. I choose my marriage. I choose the man who has supported every part of my journey, visible and invisible, for 14 years. My husband, Hale. The room erupted in quiet respect. When the ceremony ended, Alara submitted official HR paperwork that night, scheduling Julian's formal termination the following morning for corporate blackmail, breach of fiduciary duty, and unprofessional boundary violations. His threat to take client accounts collapsed immediately, without his personal leverage to hold the company. The client partnerships reaffirmed their loyalty to Novatech's brand leadership, not individual personnel. By the end of the night, every external conflict was fully resolved. The fake public marriage was dead. Julian's reign of manipulation was over. My identity was finally restored publicly and officially, but as we drove home from the gala in quiet silence, I knew the hardest work was still ahead. The lies were gone, the manipulation was ended, the public issue was fixed. But the wounds in our marriage remained, deep and raw, healed. We'd won the public battle. Now we had to fight to save our marriage for good. The weeks following the gala's dramatic resolution unfolded with quiet, intentional healing. No instant fixes, no perfect fairy tale reconciliation, just slow, honest growth for both of us. Julian's official termination passed without further incident. He left the company quietly, stripped of his status and influence, his months of manipulation and ambition ending in professional ruin. The Novatech office culture reset completely, returning to professional integrity, free of fake narratives and inappropriate personal boundary blurring. The company stabilized fully, investor confidence rebounding stronger than before, stakeholders respecting Alara's radical honesty and commitment to ethical leadership far more than they'd ever valued her polished fake power couple image. Alara and I did not rush back into our old routine, nor did we pretend the past months of betrayal and erasure never happened. We both knew our old marriage, the quiet, one-sided, self-erasing partnership where I existed only in the background and she existed only for her career, could never return. That version of us was broken beyond repair, and we didn't want to bring it back. Instead, we chose to build an entirely new marriage from the ground up, rooted in honesty, boundaries, equal respect, and mutual visibility. We began structured weekly couples therapy, sitting together in safe, guided space to unpack every wound, every mistake, every unspoken resentment that had built over years of imbalance. Alara confronted her fear of vulnerability, her addiction to professional perfection, her habit of prioritizing brand image over human connection. She learned that true leadership and true success required authenticity, not perfection, that her worth as a CEO and a woman did not depend on a polished public facade. I confronted my own long-standing flaws, my people-pleasing tendencies, my willingness to erase myself for others' comfort, my fear of conflict that had let toxic imbalance fester for years. I learned that love did not require self-sacrifice to the point of self-loss. That partnership required equal give and take, that my identity and dignity were non-negotiable, even for the person I loved most. I made the intentional decision to step back from full-time household management and relaunch my independent tech consulting business, rebuilding my professional identity and career on my own terms, no longer existing solely as Alara's supportive spouse. I reclaimed my ambition, my purpose, my public voice. Some days the work felt awkward, getting back into client meetings after 2 years away. Some evenings, therapy left us both raw and exhausted, reopening old hurts we wished would just disappear. There were small arguments, quiet nights apart, moments where doubt lingered, whether we could truly move past everything that had. Forgiveness was not a single choice we made one evening. It was thousands of tiny, repeated choices we made day after day. Alara rewrote every corporate biography, press kit, and executive. My name, Ethan Hale, appeared plainly as her legal spouse. She stopped accepting invitations to industry events unless I was welcome to join her. She no longer hid me away for the convenience of investor optics. Sometimes business contacts still expressed surprise meeting me in person, having heard so many old office rumors. Alara would smile and gently correct them, unashamed. No more brushing things off as trivial work. 6 months after the awards gala, we attended another large tech charity function. No drama, no red carpet surprises, no hidden agendas. I stood beside Alara, wearing a simple, well-fitted suit, talking with investors and engineers about my own consulting projects instead of standing silently. People asked about my work first, not just who I was married to. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Looking back, I did not wish none of the pain happened. That whole nightmare exposed cracks that had been slowly spreading inside our marriage long before Julian became the office's husband. If that day at the building entrance had never unfolded, we might have kept drifting further apart, trapped inside our comfortable but dishonest lives. Our marriage was flawless. Scars remained. There would always be memory of how easily I could be erased, how readily ambition could overwhelm. But we understood each other better now. Ilara understood that her power could never come at the cost of the her. I understood that I should never shrink myself to make another person. We drove home from the charity event that night, through Austin's streets. Ilara reached over and laced her fingers through mine on the car console. There were no grand speeches, no sweeping romantic declarations, just quiet, steady companionship. The man the security guard had mistaken for a stranger months ago was no longer invisible. I was here, I belonged here, and this time it was real.